The massive research vessel Nautilus hung suspended above the endless azure expanse of Thalassia Prime, its sleek hull reflecting the light of 3 moons. In the ship's primary lab, Dr. Rowan Nash adjusted his diving equipment while trying not to stare at his new research partner. Lieutenant Venna Telear stood as far from the observation windows as possible, her silver-scaled skin shimmering with nervous energy. As the foremost xenoarchaeologist from the desert world of Arida, she had never seen so much water in one place. The very concept of willingly submerging oneself in it seemed like madness. The environmental suits are fully tested, Rowan said, checking the seals on his equipment. The pressure at these depths won't be an issue. He glanced at Venna, noting how her elaborate ceremonial robes seemed at odds with their current setting. That's reassuring, Venna replied, her double-lidded eyes blinking rapidly. Though I still don't understand why we can't use remote drones for this survey. Rowan shook his head, his dark curls catching the lab's blue lighting. The energy signatures from the ruins interfere with remote guidance systems. Besides, he grinned, nothing beats direct observation. The ruins in question lay 3 kilometers below, their ancient spires barely visible through the crystal-clear waters. First discovered 6 months ago, they had sparked a joint research initiative between Earth's Oceanographic Institute and the Aridan Science Council. The unusual architecture suggested an advanced civilization had once thrived here, but its true significance remained a mystery. Your species' comfort with water is remarkable, Venna observed, finally approaching the window. On Arida, large bodies of water are considered sacred and dangerous. We have stories about creatures that dwell in the deep. Earth has similar legends, Rowan replied, surprised by her openness. Maybe that's why I became a marine biologist, to understand what lies beneath. He hesitated, then added, I could teach you, you know, how to swim. Venna's head frills flared in surprise. That would be highly irregular. My people aren't built for — she stopped as alarms suddenly blared through the lab. Energy spike from the ruins, Rowan announced, checking the monitors. Bigger than anything we've recorded so far. He pulled up a holographic display, showing a massive surge of power emanating from the central structure. Venna moved closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming her water anxiety. These patterns, they're similar to ancient texts found in Aridan temples. But the scale is unprecedented. Look at this, Rowan pointed to a sequence of repeating signals. It's not random. The ruins are generating some kind of message, Venna finished, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. But who would build a transmitter at these depths? And why now? Before Rowan could respond, a new alert sounded. Multiple vessels dropping out of FTL, he reported, checking the long-range sensors. Not research ships. His expression darkened. Someone else picked up the signal. Venna's frills rippled with concern. Pirates? Corporate raiders? Worse, Rowan grimaced. Look at their markings. Black market archaeologists. They'll strip this site bare and sell anything valuable to the highest bidder. We can't let that happen, Venna declared, surprising herself with her vehemence. These ruins could be the key to understanding both our people's histories. Rowan studied her for a moment, then made a decision. There's a maintenance shaft that leads directly to a secondary research pod near the ruins. We could reach it before they get their salvage equipment in position. We? Venna's frills quivered. You mean? Time for your first swimming lesson, Professor, Rowan said, grabbing a spare environmental suit. Unless you'd prefer to let those raiders destroy priceless artifacts? Venna stared at the suit, then at the vast ocean beyond the windows. Everything in her biology, her culture, her training screamed that this was madness. But something else, something deeper, pulled at her. Show me, she said quietly, reaching for the suit. Show me how humans dance with the water. As Rowan helped her into the equipment, neither of them noticed a faint blue glow beginning to emanate from the ruins below, a glow that pulsed in perfect synchronization with their movements, as if the ancient city was awakening after eons of slumber, waiting for precisely this moment of cooperation between two very different species. The hunt for answers was about to begin, and the depths of Thalassia Prime held secrets that would challenge everything both humans and Eridans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The descent through the maintenance shaft felt eternal to Venna. Water pressed against her suit from all sides as they made their way deeper into the ocean's embrace. Rowan led the way, his movements fluid and confident, while she focused on controlling her breathing and fighting the instinctive panic of being surrounded by liquid. "You're doing great," Rowan's voice came through the comm system, steady and reassuring. "Just keep your movements smooth and follow my lead." The shaft's emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through the water, but it was the growing luminescence from below that captured their attention. The ruins were now pulsing with an intense blue-green light that seemed to respond to their presence. "These readings are off the scale," Venna reported, checking her instruments. "The energy signature matches nothing in our database, but..." She hesitated, "There's something familiar about the pattern." They emerged from the shaft into open water, and Venna felt her breath catch. The ancient city spread out before them, its towering spires and graceful arches now alive with flowing lines of light. Schools of bioluminescent creatures swirled around the structures, creating a dance of light and shadow that seemed almost choreographed. "Look there," Rowan pointed to a massive doorway that appeared to be slowly opening. "The ruins are responding to something. Maybe our presence?" Before Venna could respond, their comms crackled with interference. "Multiple ships entering the area," she reported, checking the tactical display in her helmet. "They're deploying submersibles." "We need to move," Rowan said, already adjusting his propulsion unit. "That doorway might be our best chance at finding answers before they arrive." As they swam toward the entrance, Venna noticed something strange. Despite her fear, her movements were becoming more natural, as if her body was remembering something her mind had forgotten. The water no longer felt like an enemy but rather like a different kind of atmosphere. The doorway led them into a vast chamber that defied logic. Suspended globes of water floated through the air in a gravity-defying dance, each containing different marine ecosystems. Along the walls, holographic displays flickered to life, showing star charts and diagrams that slowly resolved into recognizable patterns. "This is impossible," Venna whispered, her scientific training warring with what she was seeing. "These charts, they show migration patterns between water worlds, but from over 50,000 years ago." Rowan moved to examine a central console that was gradually illuminating. "The architecture, it's not just aesthetic. These structures are machines, but they're designed to work with water in ways we've never imagined." As he touched the console, the entire chamber hummed with energy. New holograms appeared, showing figures that made both researchers freeze in amazement. They were looking at ancient humans, working alongside beings that resembled Venna's species, manipulating water in ways that seemed to defy physics itself. "By the sacred springs," Venna breathed, her frills rippling with excitement inside her helmet. "Your people, they weren't just visitors to water worlds. They were their guardians." Rowan studied the images with growing wonder. "Look at the date markers. This facility is from before human civilization as we know it. Before we supposedly evolved on Earth." He turned to Venna, his eyes wide with realization. "What if our evolutionary story is wrong? What if humans were engineered specifically to work with water?" A distant explosion interrupted their discovery. The raiders were getting closer, their salvage equipment already beginning to damage the outer structures of the ancient city. "We need to protect this place," Venna said with unexpected fierceness. "This isn't just about our research anymore. This is about both our people's heritage." Rowan nodded, his fingers moving across the console with increasing confidence. Somehow, the controls felt natural, as if they had been designed for human use. The facility still has active defense systems. If we can understand how they work. Suddenly, the water around them began to move in impossible patterns. The floating ecosystem spheres aligned themselves into complex geometric formations, and new doorways appeared in what had seemed to be solid walls. The humans in these records, Venna said, studying the holograms more closely. They're not just working with water. They're communicating with it, using it as both tool and medium. She turned to Rowan, her eyes bright with understanding. That's why your people can swim so naturally. You're not just adapted to water, you were made to be its shepherds. Before Rowan could respond, their suit sensors detected multiple breaches in the outer chambers. The raiders had arrived, and they were moving fast. Time to test if I've inherited any of my ancestors' water-shaping abilities, Rowan said, his hands moving across the ancient controls with growing confidence. Ready to help me protect our shared heritage? Venna moved to his side, her own fingers finding complementary controls that seemed designed for her species' unique touch. Together, she agreed, feeling an unexpected thrill as the water around them began to respond to their combined commands. Let's show these raiders why humans and Eridans once ruled the seas as one. The ancient facility thrummed with power as Rowan and Venna worked in perfect synchronization. Through the chamber's translucent walls, they could see the raiders' submersibles approaching from multiple directions, their cutting beams already carving into the outer structures. They're targeting the support pylons, Venna observed, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. If those fail, this entire section could collapse. Rowan nodded, his own hands moving with increasing confidence across the ancient interface. Then let's give them something else to worry about. At his command, streams of pressurized water shot from hidden vents, forcing several of the smaller submersibles to break formation. Remarkable, Venna breathed, watching him work. The facility's responding to you as if. She paused, studying new data flowing across her display. Rowan, look at this genetic analysis. The system isn't just recognizing you as authorized personnel, it's recognizing you as family. Before he could respond, a massive explosion rocked the chamber. Through the swirling debris, they spotted a much larger vessel emerging from the darkness. Its hull bore the distinctive markings of the Shadow Consortium, the most notorious artifact smugglers in the galaxy. This just got complicated, Rowan muttered. The Consortium doesn't send heavy equipment unless they know exactly what they're looking for. He turned to Venna, his expression grave. Someone tipped them off about this place. A new hologram materialized between them, showing a detailed scan of the approaching vessel. But it was the small text scrolling along the edges that caught Venna's attention. These readings, they're not just in ancient Aridan. They're in Proto-Eridan, the sacred language of water priests. Her frills quivered with excitement despite the danger. According to this, the facility isn't just a research station, it's a nexus point, one of 7 spread across the galaxy. A nexus for what? Rowan asked, redirecting another burst of pressurized water to drive back an approaching submersible. For reshaping worlds, Venna replied, her voice filled with awe. The ancient humans and Eridans, they weren't just studying water worlds. They were creating them, transforming barren planets into ocean paradises. She met his gaze through their faceplates. Your people weren't just engineered to swim, Rowan. You were designed to be terraformers, to work alongside my ancestors in crafting new worlds. The chamber shuddered again as the consortium vessel launched a barrage of sonic pulses, designed to weaken the ancient structure's integrity. But even as they fought to maintain control, new possibilities were unfolding in the facility's databanks. That's why the consortium is here, Rowan realized, his eyes widening. Think about it, technology that can transform entire planets' water systems? It would be worth billions on the black market. Drought-stricken worlds would pay anything for dash. Incoming transmission, Venna interrupted, her frills flattening in surprise. They're broadcasting on, this can't be right. They're using an ancient Aridan frequency. A voice filled their comm systems, speaking in a dialect that made Vena's scales ripple with recognition. This is Director Marius of the Shadow Consortium. Our sensors indicate 2 life signs within the central chamber. You've activated systems that have slumbered for millennia. Step aside, and you may yet survive to witness the rebirth of the old ways. The old ways? Vena questioned, but Rowan was already moving to a different console, his movements urgent. Look at these security logs, he said, pulling up ancient records. The facility wasn't abandoned, it was sealed deliberately. Something went wrong with the terraforming program. Something that made both our ancestors decide to shut it all down. The water around them suddenly seemed to darken, carrying hints of bioluminescent patterns that neither of them had programmed. The facility was responding to some hidden protocol, awakening systems that had lain dormant for thousands of years. They're breaching the outer defenses, Vena reported, watching as the consortium's cutting beams sliced through ancient barriers. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide quickly. Rowan studied the flowing data with growing concern. These readings, the facility isn't just a terraforming nexus. It's a key to something bigger. He turned to Vena, his expression visible through his faceplate. Your people's water priests, my ancestors' swimming abilities, they're all connected to whatever happened here. The question is, do we trust ourselves to handle that knowledge better than our ancestors did? Before Vena could respond, a new alarm sounded. The facility's deep scanners had detected something massive moving in the trenches below, something that, according to the ancient warnings flashing across their screens, should have remained undisturbed. Multiple contacts rising from the abyssal plane, Vena announced, her voice tense. Biosignatures unlike anything in our database. The consortium's activity must have awakened them. Through the chamber's windows, they watched in awe as enormous shapes began to emerge from the darkness below. The true guardians of Thalassia Prime were stirring, and suddenly the raiders seemed like the least of their problems. Massive forms rose from the abyss, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in complex sequences that matched the facility's own rhythms. They were like nothing either researcher had ever seen, part organic, part technological, as if the ancient engineers had created living machines to guard their secrets. Biomechanical constructs, Vena breathed, her scientific curiosity momentarily overwhelming her fear. The legend spoke of great guardians left by the water priests, but we always thought they were myths. Well, those myths are about to meet the consortium, Rowan replied, his hands moving across the controls as he tried to make sense of the new data flooding their screens. And I'm not sure which side we should be more worried about. The Guardians, the facility's records called them the Deep Watchers, were easily the size of small ships, their crystalline bodies housing complex arrays of ancient technology. As they rose, the water around them seemed to bend and flow in impossible ways. They're not just moving through the water, Rowan realized, studying the readings. They're manipulating it at a molecular level. This is what the facility was designed to do, not just terraform planets, but fundamentally alter the properties of water itself. The consortium vessels had noticed the new arrivals. Their cutting beams redirected toward the rising guardians, but the energy simply rippled across crystalline shields without effect. Director Marius's voice crackled through their comms again, now tinged with desperation. You don't understand what you're protecting, he warned. The power to reshape worlds? It's nothing compared to what those things were created to contain. Why do you think both your species buried these memories so deep? Before either of them could respond, the nearest Deep Watcher extended a crystalline tendril toward their chamber. The facility's systems responded instantly, creating a bridge of solid water between them and the ancient guardian. It wants us to go to it, Vena said softly, her frills rippling with a mix of fear and fascination. The facility, the guardians, they're all connected, waiting for the right combination of human and Aridan to awaken them. But why us? Rowan asked, even as he felt an inexplicable pull toward the waiting guardian. Why now? Because you're already proving yourselves different, a new voice echoed through their minds, ancient, vast, and somehow familiar to them both. Where your ancestors chose fear, you choose understanding. Where they saw power to control, you seek knowledge to share. The Deep Watcher's crystalline surface rippled, revealing images of the past, humans and Eridans working together to seed young worlds with oceans, to nurture new forms of life, to build a galaxy teeming with waterborne possibilities. But then came scenes of conflict, arguments over how this power should be used, fears of what they were becoming, decisions made in haste and sealed away in regret. The facility wasn't abandoned because the project failed, Vena realized, watching the ancient memories unfold. It was sealed because both our peoples were afraid of how much they were changing, afraid of what they might become if they continued down this path. The chamber shuddered as the consortium launched a desperate assault, trying to breach the facility's deepest barriers. But the Deep Watchers moved with liquid grace, their bodies forming an impenetrable wall around the ancient structure. "We have a choice to make," Rowan said, turning to Vena. "The facility's core systems are ready to activate. According to these readings, we could restore the old network, reconnect all 7 nexus points across the galaxy. But we don't know if we're ready for that power any more than our ancestors were," Vena finished. She moved closer to him, her scaled hand finding his through their suits. "The difference is, they faced this choice alone. We're facing it together." The Deep Watcher's presence in their minds grew stronger, sharing one final memory, a vision of what could have been, oceans that bridged the stars themselves, life flourishing in impossible places, 2 species growing and evolving as one. Not through conquest or control, but through partnership and understanding. "The raiders are breaching the lower levels," Rowan reported, checking the facility's sensors. "Whatever we decide, we need to decide now." Vena studied the ancient controls, then looked out at the phalanx of Deep Watchers holding back the consortium's forces. "Our ancestors sealed this place because they weren't ready for its implications. But maybe that's exactly why we are ready, because we understand the real power isn't in reshaping worlds, but in reshaping ourselves." She turned to Rowan, her eyes bright behind her faceplate. "I used to be afraid of the water. Now I understand why my people tell stories about it, why your people feel so at home in it. Water doesn't just sustain life, it connects it. All of it. Everywhere." Rowan nodded, understanding flowing between them as naturally as the currents around them. Together, they reached for the facility's core controls, their movements synchronized with thousands of years of shared history finally remembered. The ancient machinery hummed to life beneath their touch, power flowing through systems dormant for millennia. But instead of reaching for the terraforming controls that the consortium sought so desperately, Rowan and Vena accessed something deeper, the facility's true purpose, hidden beneath layers of forgotten protocol. "It was never about controlling the water," Rowan said, understanding dawning in his eyes as new data cascaded across their screens. "It was about learning from it. Water doesn't fight its environment, it adapts, it flows, it finds new paths." The Deep Watchers moved closer, their crystalline forms creating a sphere of protection around the facility as the consortium launched another assault. Director Marius's voice crackled through their comms, nearly drowned out by the sound of straining metal. "You have no idea what you're doing," he warned. "That power belongs to those strong enough to use it. The market value alone. That's exactly why our ancestors sealed this place," Vena interrupted, her fingers dancing across ancient symbols. They realized that thinking of this knowledge as a weapon or a commodity was precisely what made them unworthy of it. Through the facility's windows, they watched as the Deep Watchers began to move in perfect synchronization, their bioluminescent patterns matching the rhythm of Rowan and Vena's commands. The water around them started to change, not through force or manipulation, but through harmony, millions of microscopic adjustments creating patterns that hadn't been seen in millennia. "The facility's sharing its records with the surface," Rowan reported, watching as data streamed toward their research vessel. "Everything we've learned, everything we've discovered, it'll be available to both our peoples. No more secrets, no more buried history. They'll think we're mad, Venna said, but her tone was light, almost amused. A human and an Aridan, giving away the most powerful technology ever discovered instead of using it. Maybe, Rowan agreed, his hand finding hers again. Or maybe they'll understand what we've learned, that the real power isn't in the technology at all. It's in the choice to share it, to learn from it, to grow with it. The Deep Watcher's movement became more intricate, their crystalline bodies creating currents that gently but firmly began pushing the consortium's vessels away from the facility. Not through violence, but through an inexorable flow that gave them no choice but to retreat or be carried to the surface. They're running, Venna announced, watching the raiders' ships turn tail. But they'll be back. Others will come too, once word of this place spreads. Let them come, Rowan said confidently. The Deep Watchers aren't weapons, they're teachers. That's why they responded to us working together. They've been waiting for our species to remember how to learn from each other again. The facility systems were fully awake now, but instead of the weapons platform the consortium had hoped to find, or the terraforming engine their ancestors had sealed away, it revealed its true nature: a library, a school, a bridge between worlds and species and ideas. Through their neural link with the Deep Watchers, Rowan and Venna saw glimpses of what could be, research teams from both their worlds working together to understand the ocean's deepest mysteries, new generations of humans and Eridans learning to swim as one, ancient techniques adapted to heal polluted waters and restore dying seas across the galaxy. It's not about mastery, Venna realized, watching the future unfold. It's about partnership. With each other, with the water, with life itself. That's why humans were engineered to swim, Rowan added. Not to control the oceans, but to understand them. To be a bridge between land and sea, just as Eridans were meant to be a bridge between desert and water. The facility's light had changed, no longer the harsh blue of defensive systems but a soft, welcoming glow that reminded Venna of sunrise over Arita's sacred springs. The water around them moved like a living thing, not a force to be feared or controlled, but a partner in the dance of life itself. What do we tell them? Venna asked, thinking of the reports they'd have to make, the explanations they'd have to give. About us, about this place, about everything we've learned? Rowan smiled, his expression visible through his faceplate. We tell them the truth. That the future isn't about what one species can do alone, but what all of us can learn together. That the greatest discoveries don't come from fighting nature, but from learning to move with it. He gestured to the Deep Watchers, still moving in their eternal dance. And we show them that the real power of water isn't in its force, but in its flexibility. In its ability to take any shape while remaining true to its nature. Just like us. The facility systems had finished their transformation, ancient weapons becoming tools for understanding, barriers becoming bridges. Above them, their research vessel was already receiving the first transmissions, not just data, but a new way of seeing the universe itself. Venna looked out at the ocean that had once terrified her, seeing it now not as an alien environment but as a connection to everything that mattered, to history, to wisdom, to the future itself. And beside her stood a human who had shown her that the greatest discoveries come not from conquering our fears, but from embracing them as opportunities to grow. Ready to swim back up? Rowan asked, already plotting their course through the living currents. Venna's frills rippled with anticipation rather than fear. Together, she said, taking his hand. Always together. As they began their ascent, the Deep Watchers resumed their vigil, but not as guards this time. They were witnesses to a new beginning, to the moment when two species remembered that the greatest adventures don't come from standing apart, but from learning to flow as one through the endless seas of possibility.